Hi, welcome to Edward Box Guitar Tuition. So the classic album inspection today is Dio's Holy Diver, released May the 25th, 1983, so it's 40 years old today. Real classic this. Obviously the late great Ronnie James Dio, for some or many the greatest heavy metal singer of all time. So how did this album come about? So obviously Dio's been in Rainbow, then he's been in Sabbath, made two tremendous albums with Sabbath, but then tensions start to appear on the Mob Rules record, I guess, and then they make the live album on that tour, Live Evil, and then they're kind of splitting into two camps and they fall out of the mix, allegedly Dio going back in the studio and remixing tracks at night. How true this is, there's always two sides to every story, but Dio jumped ship, and obviously he's kind of stuck what do I do next, but he's pretty much, I reckon, already formulated the idea that he'd do his own band. He'd built his name up with Rainbow and Sabbath, and he'd been sort of, someone else at the wheel of the car, so to speak, and he wanted to drive the car. And he had a solo deal, I think, already in place with Warner Brothers. I'm not sure about that. And he went looking for musicians, and he contacted Vinny Appice and said, look, do you want to come with me? And Vinny Appice was like, yeah, great, I don't know why Vinny Appice got let go from Sabbath, but I think Ronnie Dio said they were kind of seen as a pair, probably because they're both Americans. I don't know. But then obviously Bill Ward came back for the Born Again album, but didn't do the tour. It was Bev Bevan and so on. And that was pretty much the end of Bill Ward with Sabbath for a long time. So Vinny Appice and Ronnie were looking around. I think they were looking around LA, but he couldn't find musicians he liked. And the guitar players he was looking at were sort of Van Halen clones to him, and he wanted something different. So he decided, well, let's go to London, let's go to Europe, and have a look. I mean, I remember at this time whether Dio's getting a bit of money off the label, I don't know, or he's being funded. Obviously, the flight to the UK and, go and rehearse and look for people costs money. So I'm not sure whether it's coming out of his own pocket or maybe had some kind of development money from the label. But don't quote us on the fact that he's already got the deal, but I think he did. But anyway, so he went over to London, and it was kind of like, yeah, let's check out some European. Whether he's phoned Jimmy Bain prior to this or met him in LA, I can't remember. But certainly when he went to London, he hooked up with Jimmy Bain. What guitar players do you know, Jimmy? And two were put out there. One was John Sykes, obviously at this point, 83, John Sykes. Is probably just about to leave the Tigers of Pantang. It's probably 82 this. This would be 1982, I'd imagine. So John Sykes has probably just left the Tigers. Whether he's joined Thin Lizzy yet, I don't know, probably not. And then the other one was a guy called Vivian Campbell. So people who heard Sweet Savage's session on the Friday Rock Show probably be familiar with Viv Campbell. I remember hearing Sweet Savage's session at the time. And although the songs didn't stand out, the guitar playing did, the solos, the guy was nimble-fingered in it, and you could hear that splitting through the speakers. So anyway, they had listened to Sykes, but Ronnie felt it wasn't quite right, and I can see that. I mean, later down the line, if you listen to something like Valley of the Kings or a track like that, you could imagine Sykes and Dio making something amazing. I think Vivian Campbell's a little more kind of British sounding, So basically they get together with Viv Campbell to jam, and Jimmy Bain sits on bass, and prior to this, Vinny Appice and Dio had just been jamming tracks. There's two tracks, Don't Talk to Strangers and Holy Diver, that Ronnie Dio had written on his own. So a lot of people forget Dio plays guitar and bass, so he can basically crunch out a riff. So they jammed out these tracks. It sounded great. I think either Jimmy Bain had, decided he wanted in before this all basically in the practice. It was like, right, this is it. The chemistry was there, and you can hear that on the album. The chemistry on this is as good as the chemistry on Heaven and Hell and the chemistry on Rainbow Rising. It's got a great alchemy. So they decamp back to LA and get cracking, writing other songs. One of the songs utilises a Sweet Savage riff. Now, which one is that? Yeah, it's Caught in the Middle. It's the same riff. I don't know what the Sweet Savage song is. And I think there's other riffs that maybe pop up from Viv Campbell's time in Sweet Savage. they say about writing it in terms of recording the album. It's recorded at sorry about this. It's Sound City in LA as well, and studios engineered by a guy called Angelo Curry. So Ronnie Dio at this point decided to produce himself, which is a good move. He'd made a lot of albums with Martin Birch, and obviously learnt off him basically. One of the things they did was built like a wooden kind of box to put Vinny Appice's drum kit in with plywood. So this is what I call isolation boost. This is quite a common technique. It basically deadens the sound. So it's quite interesting. There's quite a nice live clatter on the sound. I'm guessing that's some like kind of reverb effects afterwards. But it's got a really natural drum sound, this album. And it's got a hard edge to it. You know, there's a hard edge to the toms and the snare. It's really good. And Vinny Appice's drumming, it's quite high in the mix. It's quite bold. Jimmy Bain's bass is nice and warm. I think people forget what a great bass player Jimmy Bain is. You know, sometimes, particularly in Dio, he's just pummeling, hitting quarter notes and stuff. But he does some really cool stuff. And he plays great with Vinny Appice. It's the first time they play together, but they just gel. And then you've got Viv Campbell, it was just a real find for Dio. Such a quirky player at this time. You can hear Viv Campbell. There's two influences. There's Gary Moore when he tends to shred, and there's a couple of licks he pulls off on solos that are basically copied off Gary Moore. But then he's got this kind of fast, kind of nervous, energised vibrato and way of playing, which comes from Rory Gallagher, I think. And the fact he has a lot of top end on his sound, so I believe on his lead tone he rolled the bass off in his Marshall right down, maybe totally down. Personally I would like a bit more bottom end, and then later on he did, with other stuff he did like Def Leppard and Whitesnake, you could hear that coming into his sound. But at this point, certainly on the lead sound, he's got this kind of wispy, bitey lead sound. Rhythm sounds a little fatter. He's great at kind of shaking the double stops, Viv Campbell, which is a typical thing at that time with the new Wobbin guitar playing. I think that's what's interesting about his guitar playing. He's kind of forsaken that, but basically he's come from New Wobbin, although Sweet Savage is from Ireland, Northern Ireland, I believe, and a proper New Wobbin band. He's got that New Wobbin style, but with this kind of interesting lead style. He's avoiding two-handed tapping and whammy bars. He's not doing the Van Halen thing. Like Sykes in that effect. In fact, Sykes is similar as well because he's got a wider vibrato, but he's got the Gary Moore influence as well. But Campbell plays up a storm on this album, and he got a lot of attention. He was only 20. He's kind of like, this is one of the new guitar styles. I think rightly so. He was something different. He got a lot of traction over in the States, and it gave him a big career. Dio's performance is stupendous. He's on full kind of aggression mode on this album. Building off the Mob Rules, the more angry vocals on that, and some of the vocals on this are very angry. So that's a sort of, it went number 13 in the UK, number 56 in the US, eventually went platinum in 1989 in the UK, in America, silver in the UK. It's probably Dio's best-selling album, his back catalogue. Let's go through it. I've talked about 8 minutes already. So it opens with Stand Up and Shout. Not a track that needs a massive patter. It's a great song, great opener, proper new Wobbin riff in the key of A with the double stops on the on the D and G string fret 5 and 4. Just very almost like Saxon. But great drum performance from Vinny Appice. It's only 3 minutes 18, and then Viv Campbell basically does a face melting solo. So Viv Campbell's speed comes from a lot of fast hammer-ons and pull-offs. He's not an alternate picker. But it's got a kind of little quirk at the end, those little quirky sort of octave things he does at the end, and wispy pinch harmonics. It's a great track. I love Dio's lyric on this, and I think it's a kind of metaphor for what Dio's done. It's about you taking ownership of something. You own the road, you take the wheel, and that's really about what he's done in Dio. In actual fact, this track was a backing track. It was the last song to be laid down, so the backing track was done. The rest of the band members went back to their various locations, and Dio did the vocals, came up with the melody, and did this at the end. And then when he, played it to the band, the whole mix, it was like, oh, this is great. Really great track. There you got Holy Diver. Again, a track that doesn't need much introduction. Not a track I listen to as much because I used to play this in a covers band. And in another old band I was in, so I've played this song a lot of times. I'll tell you quickly, we were playing like a kind of biker festival in front of about 2,000 or 3,000 people, and I'd been on holiday for 2 weeks, and we'd had a practice before we went away, and we got on stage, and I played this song so many times and I fucked it up. He fell apart in the middle, and I kind of go with the bass player and go, right, let's just go to the solo. Other than that, the set was really good. But anyway, it's just one of those weird things that happens. You know a song really well, but then you just have a moment. Anyway, this has got a slow gallop. It's in the key of C minor, sort of C minor, C Dorian vibe. Quite unusual, not a typical key for a rock song. I call it the Eye of Tiger key. Another song that's in this key is Billy's Got a Gun by Def Leppard. The reason this is unusual key is it has no open pedal tone. Okay, like Stand Up and Shout's in the key of A, sort of A minor, A Dorian. So you can pedal it A string, for instance. You get your open G5 in this if you want to play that chord. Great solo by Campbell on this, probably his best solo. Maybe one of the best solos he ever did. Really nice, love the way it builds. Great. It's got a great ad lib at the end. I think that's one of Dio's trademarks. He does these great ad lib outros on songs. Stand Up and Shout's got it. This has got it. It's something he just did better than anyone. Save Halford, really. Halford's a great end of song ad libber. It's all like Bloodstone's amazing, you know. So yeah, you got your long keyboard intro on this, which maybe it didn't need for me, but it creates a nice bit of atmosphere. It's 5:51. Yeah. You know, another all-time classic, replete with cheesy video. Next track's again, it's like this is a deep cut. It's a track that doesn't get wheeled out. Would have got wheeled out on the first tour because it didn't have many tracks, and then probably got discarded. I really like it. I think Dio said he wanted to write a Rolling Stones type of rocker. So it's gypsy. So this has got a bit of, you know, it's kind of a little closer to kind of hair metal with the lyrics, you know. Gypsy, obviously Sabbath did a song called Gypsy on Technical Ecstasy. It's only 3:39. Campbell's riff's great, and this is a lovely kind of dicka-dicka-dow, and that's something like a little staccato sort of line on the E and A strings that that appears on the next track, that type of phrase, and Invisible later on. Really great track, this great cool lead work by Will Campbell. I love Dio's vocal on this. And again, it's just a bit more of a commercial rocker. Like I say, it's got a little bit, you know, you can imagine a hair metal band sleazing it up and doing this type of song later on, and more sleazy. I think the album really benefits from it. I think it's a really good track. So track 4 is typically seen as the weakest track, Caught in the Middle. But when I was listening, you know, in the last few days to this, I think what's interesting about this is it's just quite a refreshing track. You know, this album's sequenced really well, and this shows the value of getting track sequencing right. When this track appears, you're kind of ready for a track like this, and its melody and its commerciality works really well at this point. So I really like this song. Dio doesn't sing aggressive unless he's singing smoother. They've obviously written it like with a view, like it could be used as single. It's 4 minutes 14. Viv Campbell just plays a simple harmonised solo on this, and it benefits from it. And it's a good track. It's not a typical Dio track, but that's why it's, pardon me, I'm itching. That's why it's interesting, you know. Then side 1 finished with another all-time classic, Don't Talk to Strangers. So this has got a lovely intro in D minor. Viv Campbell just plays a slightly different kind of shape, you know, not a typical kind of Scorpions thing. It's 4 minutes 53, and then you've got the kind of flat 5s on the verse, which is quite interesting because Ronnie Dio's written this, and that flat 5, it's kind of predating Dokken really, and George Lynch using that. I think it's a flat 5 anyway. And then Viv Campbell shows off his Gary Moore influence on this solo, so he does the classic lick, which we all think Gary Moore invented, but it's actually, I've mentioned this before, it's actually nicked off Pat Thrall. So if you listen to, is it Automatic Man, I think, you find that on YouTube. Pat Thrall was in a band like that, he does this lick, so you know, it's kind of like pentatonic 15-12 on high E and B, then you got your major 7 arpeggio 15-12 on high E, 13-12 on B. Phil Collins copied this Sykes as well. Then you move that shape up 2 frets, and then you can kind of carry it on to a different shape. Going into the guitar speaker, guitarists will know. So it's a classic lick, you know, it builds up. So really cool solo, you know. Viv Campbell showing off his chops on this. I think when Craig Goldie used to do this, he used to cover this neck and do it how-ons and pulse. It was pretty cool, actually. So it's a great side 1. I mean, you know, really good sequencing, you know, spot on. So the original side 2 was just straight through the heart. It's another killer tune. This is like, This might be the best cut on the album. This is F sharp, great Campbell F sharp riff, and it's that classic thing in F sharp when you know you get this kind of riff like Hard and Heavy by Lion and stuff like that. Jimmy Bain's just pedaling the quarter notes, dun dun. Actually done a cover of this years ago. Played a little guitar festival and we did a cover of this, and it was really hard to sing. Probably didn't do a great job or good job, but anyway. But this again, fairly straightforward solo. But I think Dio's vocal on this is proper up there. I mean, F sharp's like a higher key than E, and you're hearing all the kind of rasp of his high end, but the power. It's extraordinary vocal performance. This is a great track. Yeah. Then you've got Invisible next. This starts with this nice clean intro. Again, people see this as a filler cut, but it's kind of mirroring Gypsy. It's really cool. It's kind of got a similar feel to Straight Through the Heart, but really good, really interesting lyric. The lyrics are kind of ahead of the time. It's kind of you know, got about gender identity, I think. Really good, really cool Campbell solo, and he brings out his Gary Moore influence on this. He does that classic Gary Moore lick, you know, the pentatonic on the B, 15-12, and then you're either playing 15 on the G or you're sliding down 11 on the B and you're getting that blues slidey sort of sound, and then he moves that around chromatically. Again, Sykes used to do this lick. Yeah, so it's another really good track, another deep album track that, you know, probably got played on the first tour and then not afterwards, apart from when they played the whole album. Then you've got an all-time classic, Rainbow in the Dark. Again, great example of a commercial heavy metal song. So it's really melodic, it's really catchy, but it's not compromising on its heaviness. Great Campbell riff, great Campbell solo, great, amazing vocal by Dio on this. You know, this is right at the top, so the top note on this is the top of the tenor range. So it's a top C, B, C, B and A. So he's kind of going up there, like to stay in that register, to stay in that power is incredibly difficult. And he just makes it sound effortless, cool lyric, great track, and a lovely keyboard line written by Jimmy Bain that, again, in another situation could be kind of cheesy and pandering to commerciality, but it adds a hook to the song, adds a layer. And then it finishes with Shame on the Night. I really like this track. So I think, you know, he's taking the doomy tempo of something like Simon, the Sign of the Southern Cross, and that thing, you know, the Mob Rules album and the Heaven and Hell album finished with the slow tempo songs, Lonely as a Word, over and over. And I think Dio's sort of taken that on board, but they've kind of play this dark, doomy blues number. I really like the do, which is really cool. I like the lyric. I think Dio was talking about the night being a difficult time for some people. You're alone with your thoughts, and you know, it's kind of shaming the night for making you feel like this. So I really like the metalness of the title, but the way the lyrics kind of reflecting how the nighttime can be for some people. So this has really got a really epic ending, cool solo. I like the way it breaks back down in the middle section, and it's just really powerful. So yeah, you can see that again. He's kind of as well like Dio. You know, his time in Sabbath. If you took the track sequencing on this and put it up against the Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell, you can see similarities. Stand Up and Shout, Neon Nights, Turn Up the Night, Holy Diver, Voodoo, Children of the Sea, with its soft intro, Gypsy, Lady Evil. Yeah, Caught in the Middle is like the commercial track, The Walk Away, The Slipping Away, Don't Talk to Strangers. I don't know, Falling Off the Edge of the World sort of vibe. Shame on the Night, obviously. Sign of the Southern Cross. You know, so you can hear sort of where that's inspired, sort of the shape of the album, I think. But I think Dio gets it better. Sabbath. I mean, I would prefer the Sabbath albums to these, but I wouldn't dispute that this album's more consistent and the track sequencing is great. This is, you know, this is a pretty perfect album. This got to be said. Easily a 9 out of 10. A lot of people get a 10. I wouldn't dispute that. I used to prefer Last in Line, but as time's gone on, I think this is a really fantastic record. And it's one of those shame things where, you know, the next record was really good, but it just was never quite as good as this. And then he fell out with Viv Campbell, and, you know, Viv Campbell fell out with him, I should say. But yeah, I've gone on for nearly 20 minutes, but it's Holy Diver, isn't it? It's one of the great metal albums of all time. Great, 40 years old today. Cheers, thanks for checking out.